Hello, Mary Lou. How do you do? Hi, Sue. Nice to see you. Hey, Diane. Marty, you out there on the West Coast? Out there on the best coast. Hi, Cynthia. Nice to see you. Hey, Chloe. Nice to see you there. Charity. That's very giving of you to come here. Pam. Pam, are you up at work, by the way? Um, it is absolutely, Diane. Happy first day of spring. And goodness me, does it feel like spring has sprung here? Although I still have the big gloves on and the toque and the jacket, because springtime in the Rockies. There's that old song, hi Christopher, that old song, it's springtime in Alaska and it's 40 below. Love that song. So, ladies and gentlemen, hi there. Lovely to have you here. It's always a treat to welcome people to Field and Yoho National Park. Um, Okay, I was going to try and say hi. So just a quick hello. Hey, Hannah. I was excited, Christine. I was expecting to see we had a lot more people signed up, so I don't know if the count is off or if someone's tour is running long or whatever. But it's lovely to have you all here. Every time I come into Yoho Park, it just makes me happy. And this is a day about happiness. So if you haven't met me before, my name is Patrick. And I don't live here. I'm in beautiful British Columbia right now. I crossed the Continental Divide from Banff about an hour and a half, and I'm down here in Field. Oh, is it the Persian New Year as well? How cool is that? That's super cool, Christina. I'm going to have to read more about that. Um, that is really cool. Do you know, years ago, just a total side note, I went to university twice in Paris, but I had a very good Iranian friend, and he was Zoroastrian, and we would drink wine, and he introduced me to Persian poetry. So that was really cool. Um, but it's lovely to have you all here. I am down in Yoho Park. It's the smallest of the four, hey Hayward, of the four contiguous parks here in the Canadian Rockies. Of course, there's a fifth park, Waterton, down to the south. But this is Yoho, and it has the highest number or density. Hi, Bahaner, excuse me. Hi, everyone. Has the highest density of peaks that are up around that 3,000 meter, 10,000 feet height. Um, why that's significant is I have dropped down the valley as I came down into here from Alberta, from the Lake Louise side, and I'm up in the trees. You've never been up here with me, even if you've been here lots of times before. I'm always thrilled how much reception you get. But you see all the holes in that tree there? Well, as I was pulling into town today, I slammed on the brakes and pulled over. I didn't get a photo, but I saw a great big pileated woodpecker flying over. If you were on my tour last night, you saw a woodpecker with me, which is lovely. But the pileated one is, well, Diane, it is honestly the most beautiful one to watch. And that's out of no offense to other woodpeckers. But of course, it looks like a fighter jet. Now, this was a female because the head wasn't that bright, but they have that long head, about the size of a crow. I mean, it's the biggest woodpecker out there. So what they do is they drill into these old trees like this to draw bugs in, and the bugs come inside. And then as those holes get bigger and bigger, other birds will nest in them. They're so beautiful, Diane. So I'm up above the tiny town of Field. So Field is the smallest of the permanent communities here in the Canadian Rockies. It was twice the size it is today back before 1954, and that's when trains switched from coal to diesel. But the real reason, now this is actually the history of the trains, but first let me step back and give a very important land acknowledgement. I'm still on Treaty 7 territory here. I'm on the British Columbia side of the Continental Divide. This was historically the land of the Kuktaksa people, and it still is, or the Kootenai people. And that's because as this valley continues down for about 50 more kilometers, the Kicking Horse River that comes through here flows into the Columbia River. Hence, the British side of the Columbia River, hence British Columbia and a colonial construct. But the Kuktaksa, unlike the indigenous communities where I live, had access to salmon. And salmon made all the difference. So salmon don't come up to this river, but they come up the Columbia River. Yeah, well, I'll tell you about Kicking Horse. And because it was Dr. James Hector was kicked by his horse, and he's a neat fellow. But so this is Treaty 7, though, which is, of course, the Blackfoot First Nation, Taxa, Cree, Stoney Nakoda, and Métis Treaty 3. So this is the BC side. That means all of this snow around me, and there's lots of it here, is all going to melt down into the Kicking Horse River. It'll flow into the Columbia River. It will then flow north before it curves around what's known as the Big Bend, and there's two major dams, and then it flows down and through the state of Washington and becomes the border between Washington and Oregon, and then eventually discharges out by Astoria. Now, down on the Columbia River, which was actually named kind of by New Columbus, it was fur trade. But that's where Fort Vancouver was, not Vancouver, BC, Fort Vancouver, which was the headquarters of the Hudson's Bay Company in the West Coast. Now, this is the earliest I've ever done a tour here, and that's because I'm going to go skiing this afternoon, but it's a high of 4 degrees, and it's about minus 12. It's actually a bit warmer than that now. There's no wind. It's probably minus 8 here. It was minus 12 in Alberta. Yeah, so I just thought I would do a couple of morning tours with you, and then I'd go afternoon skiing. But the birds are all around and dancing. So the population of Field itself is about 190 people. So it's tiny, but because the big hill down from Lake Louise was so steep, the early trains couldn't carry a dining car. And so they built a small lodge here, the George Stevens House. And that was actually the birth, they are saying that, but that was actually the birth of what became that great chain of hotels in this country. Because they realized people would travel out here to come and stay and look at the mountains, not just to get across the country. And that then led, of course, to the commissioning of the Banff Springs Hotel, the real granddaddy of all those great Canadian Pacific hotels. So that's why Littlefield is here. And then the decision was made. Too many trains had accidents. The decision was made that they would build the giant spiral tunnels, and so that's a huge network, this figure eight system. Now there's lots of animal prints all over. These are mostly squirrels down through here. It was interesting. I was walking up the road, and I suddenly saw an animal come around the corner. I don't have my bear spray with me, but it was someone out walking their dog. It was a lovely dog, but it was one of those moments. Now look at this day here, ladies and gentlemen. It is often cloudier here than it is over on the Alberta side, because this is one of the three major slopes that weather has to come over from the Pacific to get over into the Banff area and eventually on to Calgary. But that is Mount Burgess and Walcott. Now, this is very important. And in fact, when I say this is very important, when they were building the trains out here, the workers in the 1880s would talk about stone bugs. Oh, there you go. You can hear a train in the distance. Always echoes through the valley. But they talk about stone bugs. Well, what were stone bugs? Well, they were, of course, fossils. Now, Burgess himself was just part of governance, and they named the mountain after him. But Walcott was invited out here and was actually over on the mountain that is just up through the trees. I'll get you a better view for it, but that's Mount Stephen up there, and that's where he found his first fossil beds. No, Elizabeth, it isn't. Good question. I'll come back to the town in a minute. But they found these huge fossil beds. This was actually the first UNESCO World Heritage Site of all the Canadian Rockies down through here, and it's now known as the Burgess Shale. Now it all dates back about 550 million years. Now remember, our planet, if we say is 4 billion years old, and within 500 million years, we had single cell organisms. Well, then we didn't do much as a planet for about 3 billion more years, and suddenly there was an explosion of life. And as it exploded, this was all at that point tropical mud flats, and some of those early organisms were buried, and they're protected here. This is, for those who feel the need, this is the so-called missing link. It's these fossil beds around here give us the history of the world as we know it today and the development of life on this planet. So that's how important tiny little field is here. Let me just curve around. I'm going to show you that peak from a totally different angle. Look at that gorgeous peak. That is Mount Field. So this is named for Cyrus Field, who was a billionaire due to telegraph money. So both the town and the mountain are named after him. That is because Canadian Pacific just about failed in the 1880s. They just about ran out of money, and they were desperate to finance. And when they heard Cyrus Field was coming out here, they named a town after him. They named a mountain after him, and he never invested a penny. And so he got a town and a mountain. Yes, Christina. Got a town and a mountain, and then all of a sudden didn't invest. But Sir George Stephen, and that's the mountain that's up behind us here, and I'll show you better. He was, of course, born in Banffshire in Scotland. You might note that thanks, Becca, that I live in Banff. And I've had dinner at his house. And hey, Catherine, nice to see you here from Saginaw. I've had dinner in his house, which is in the Royal Square Mile in Montreal. He was also the first president of the Bank of Montreal and found financing for the trains that really united this country. Now, that financing for the trains was right around the time that you had a massive economic collapse in the UK, because people were over investing in trains. So it was an extremely difficult time. They figure that it represented something like 20% of the entire British economy at one point over there. And so George Stephen was trying to find investment here in the Canadian trains. So I'm just up above the town of Field. And as it's World Happiness Day, I thought I'd take you to Cemetery, because I know you were dying to see it. But it is interesting to be up. I'm actually up by I'm up by their water treatment system here. Of course, very isolated community and very isolated living. But you will see, here's the sign. Now, we're still within a national park. This is, of course, Yoho National Park. And you can take a postcard there. And the Field Cemetery here. Of course, there were so many early accents, but I love this. As you linger here, listen for the sing note, a varied thrush or the buzz of a passing hummingbird. And like I say, for those of you just joining in, I saw a beautiful pileated woodpecker this morning as I was driving into here. So it's just fantastic. And there is your view now of Mount Dennis up in the distance. 2 trips ago, when I was here, we were watching helicopters come over and blasting for avalanches up on that particular mountain. But that one has the greatest density of accessible frozen waterfalls pretty much anywhere in the world that stay frozen for months and months and months. And that's because, as you can see, it's already 9:40 in the morning, yet it's still shadowy here. So it keeps it frozen. And so people come here to ice climb on the frozen waterfalls. So let's wander down together into town. So I was asked a question earlier. Hi, Lynn. I was asked a question earlier about the cost of living here. Well, it's the same deal where you have the need to reside clause. By the way, these are all aspen trees, and you see this big burl formation on it. That's where they would have had an early spring at one point, and it would have gotten so warm that the tree thought it was spring, and the sap started to run, and then a real freeze came back, and it can cause, of course, that expansion. That's where you get these formations on the side of trees here. Huge issue in Calgary, as my Calgary friends would know, because of course they get the Chinook winds that come in there, and they do think it's spring. But it is interesting. These feel very much like the kind of cemeteries you would find around gold rush towns. This isn't a gold rush town; it's a train town, of course. But this is the one that I think people really find quite moving, right there. Just 1927, unknown man. So age 21, I expect they were guessing at that age. But someone somewhere is missing that person and wondering whatever happened, right? Amazing to think. So 1927 was almost always the cause of death. No, it doesn't, Chloe. Good question. But almost always there are landslides that led to these sort of losses of life in those days, construction accidents. So it was unknown, and the person was probably migrating in here, maybe hunting or something. So no, running a B&B, in fact, Chloe, so if you were to buy anywhere in the national park, so you have these need to reside requirements. And so part of the reason Field is so small is, frankly, not a lot of people need to live here. You can qualify to live in Field if you work at Lake Louise. So thanks, Cynthia. In fact, one of my neighbors, he is the person in charge of all the equipment at Lake Louise Ski Hill, excluding the lift. So he runs all the snow making, all that, a huge job. And it is a crazy huge job. Sean, he's a fabulous guy and a fabulous neighbor. His whole family, I have the best neighbors in the world. I love them all. But he lived here for a while. He has 125 direct reports. How would you like that for a job? But he said and what most people who have lived here, their eventual backing away from actually living in Field are 2 things. One is obvious, is the isolation, right? You don't have a grocery store here. The other side is this shadow, that you're not in the direct sunlight for so much time. Thanks, Margaret. All that noted, it is exactly right, Cynthia. It's so pretty. Look at the snow just everywhere through here. And this is a very low snowfall year for us. They've had a lot. Well, it's California's catching all the snow. Goodness gracious me. But it's typically a few degrees warmer down here. The weather does move in. Hi, everyone joining. Hey, Patrick. I don't know. I always get that fun little rush when a Patrick joins. We're united. We're united by March 17th. But to Chloe's question, If you buy a house that's a B&B, you then have to reapply for the license. And so that wouldn't qualify. Yeah, a home business does not qualify for need to reside. I just love the light on the mountains this morning. Now, to what extent, how controlled it actually is. Here's someone going out for a hike up the path there. So I don't know where he's headed, but gorgeous day. Good morning. I do love these random, oh, there's a few more. I say, oh, you know what they're doing? They're going ice climbing. That's exactly what they're doing because they all have packs on, but they don't have touring skis on. So they're going to go up ice climbing. They're going to hang off frozen waterfalls just for the fun of it. Yeah, well, it's the perfect weather because it's been cold all night. So the ice is nice and hard. And you guys going climbing? Yeah, have a good one. I'm just talking about it. Yeah. So yeah, they got all their gear there. And so they have to walk up that path where I started. They get up to the base. Yeah. Well, Christina, ice climbing, it's interesting. I just listened to another interview with Alex Honnold the other day. He was the person who climbed El Capitan with no ropes. And it's not actually, and I've been a climber for years. It's climbing is not an adrenaline sport. In fact, as Alex Honnold says, if you feel adrenaline, something terrible has gone wrong. Yeah, my problem with ice, to be honest, is you like cold and wet. Do you know what I'm going to do, everyone? What I'd like to do here is I want to take my toque off and see if you can hear the birds. There are tons of migratory birds. That is a tiny little finch up there, I think. I think that's a tiny little finch, yeah. So it is the first day of spring, although for us, all that means is we're exactly on that. Isn't it lovely to see them? We're exactly on 12 hours of sunlight and 12 hours of night. Now that side is gorgeous, but we still have March, April, May. We still have 2 months of snow, really. There is Mount Dennis starting to look spectacularly glorious. Now, Yoho itself, and I know many of you know this, but it is a Cree word. It is an expression of awe, and we simply translate it as a wow. And I think that's a fabulous name for it. Now, between Mount Dennis and Mount Stephen is the wash system. If you're unfamiliar with a wash, it's very much a mountain system. Remember, 85% of our precipitation falls as snow. Now, it's going to start to warm up, and all this snow around here needs to melt, and it melts in quite a rush. And therefore, when it starts to melt at that kind of speed and velocity, it has to go somewhere. So you need those dry riverbeds in order to move all that snow down. Otherwise, of course, it will flood everything away. And now this is a huge issue in mountain areas the world over. Interestingly, of course, some of you joined me when I was in Winnipeg. They get flooding too, even though it's dead flat. But that's for the other reason. They have no ability to move the snow to other directions. But I'm just letting the camera adjust. Look at that. It's just made for postcards, isn't it? So I'm going to come down over a little bridge, and that's where the wash is. Hey, Ruth. And as I go over the little wash down there, it's actually not so much a wash as a creek. It is a gorgeous one. Diane, it's funny, I don't really have a lot of phone calls when I drive from Banff to here because the phone cuts out several times. But I called my brother this morning as I was leaving Banff, and because he's out in Vancouver Island, and I said, dude, I should put this on video. You're going to want to move home. But it sounds like they were having a nice day out there too. So fair's fair. But you see this tree coming down, these sort of things, this is all this movement. So this is all avalanche damage in here. You'll see how many trees have fallen down into the forest here. So of course, historically, it was glaciation. I mean, the mountains pop up out of the ground about 75 million years ago. Keep in mind the fossil beds are 550 million years old, right? So that kind of puts it all in context. There were events that were unrelated to each other. But and we're still in the Canadian Rockies, we're just in the deep internal ranges rather than the front ranges out where I live in Banff. Because of course they moved from west to east as these giant thrust faults push these up out of the ground. But then, through a series of ice ages, we've been carved into these shapes that we recognize today. But the main effect of erosion now on the mountains is that freeze and thaw that happens. So down over the bridge we go. and we're coming right into the town of Field, and gradually the light is coming on to us. See, so the light will be hitting Lake Louise ski hill now. So this is why, of course, I'm going to take you all up to Lake Louise. I'm going to keep my tour at Lake Louise quite tight because John, my buddy John, right up in England, has his 2-year celebration after. And then I'll go skiing for a while. And then we'll have a World Happiness Day somewhere beautiful. But here, this is this wash system. You see all these felled trees through here. So all of that snowfall has to move somewhere. And it's not there yet. We're still well below freezing. There's no threat of any melt happening now. But when it starts, it takes about 2 weeks. Now, I couldn't leave town if I wanted to right now because, frankly, as a wise man once said, I see that train a rolling. It's rolling around the bend. And I ain't seen the light since I don't know when. Lynn, there you are. This is Lynn's very favorite place in the world. I almost sent you a message this morning to tell you how beautiful it was here today, Lynn, but I figure if you're busy, you wouldn't make it. But it's lovely to have you here in gorgeous Field on a perfect bluebird day. It's nice as we've all gotten to know each other over time. We know these different things, and we know that Lynn is absolutely in love with Field. This was the original house of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. A lot of people have been asking for different raw histories. I might give one on the police at some point, because of course they're considered among the most respected police in the world until you go to their headquarters. Then that's okay. Until you go to their headquarters in Ottawa with Indigenous people, and you get a whole different view of the RCMP. So yeah, it'll be an interesting talk. I do need to, maybe next week I'll put up a couple of raw histories. So here you go. This is talking about the fossil beds. Now there's several different areas of them, but there's the Mount Stephen. So you go up to this pass. This is a gorgeous hike. Do you know, I might do it again this summer. I don't think I can take you with me because of reception. I did it years ago, but you go up, you can only go see the fossil beds officially with a Parks Canada person because, in fact, they caught a couple of people last year. Sorry, I'm putting my toque back on just because it's just cold enough. My head's getting a bit cold. Lynn, I had taken my toque off to hear all the songbirds here celebrating spring and Global or World Happiness Day. And as I say, I'm going to do a tour later today on that particular subject because I think it's an important one and it's a chance for us all to enjoy the equinox together. Ruth, maybe, just the reality is I'll be on an official thing. So it's because I haven't actually hiked Finn's butt up here yet, so I'm going to have to bring my kid up. So I want to come back to one other point. I didn't see them a lot last year, but the year before, if I can time spring out well, I will be home actually for a lot of May. I might be able to, did you, Lynn? Oh, I'll have to look. We get fabulous wildflowers down the edge of this. Are they, Diane? Isn't that lovely? So fabulous wildflowers. But this is the whole little town. So it's 52 kilometers further west to get to the town of Golden. And I owe you a tour in Golden. Golden's really lovely. But so there's a grocery store there, or they can go up to Lake Louise, where of course you have a very little expensive grocery store. Hi, Kristen, lovely to have you here. And then you carry on to Banff, which is no better deal. Canmore's got big grocery stores, but if you live in a small community like this, probably once a month you go all into the city, and people from Golden do too. So there you go, 1932, and this was, the original jail was near here. Thanks, Kristen. You don't need to come in late and give me money. You're just welcome to be here. Not that I don't want people to give me money, but have a look. The bird songs are just lovely. And I decided to start up here today because the last time I was here, I was down in a different direction. There's huge raven, but as I say, earlier today, down by the Russian willows. Now, there's Russian willows by the old train station. They were planted when there was a royal visit. There's some in Banff as well. This little B&B is called Burgess Lookout. Yeah, so to qualify here, if you work and live in the town of Field, chances are you either work for Parks Canada or you work with the trains. And this is one of the 8 sections from Medicine Hat, which is really the border with Saskatchewan, right out to Vancouver. And this is one of the most complicated sections because they're dealing with the Big Hill. And that makes the Big Hill. And the Big Hill is up to my right. But let me go down a couple of blocks. Now, there is one bird. Hello, you gorgeous. Yesterday, I was trying to Google them. I had a couple of birds in the back of my house just singing. I mean, so to put it in perspective, yesterday morning was minus 14 at home. I didn't actually have a tour on until we did our just for fun one. That's right, I went out biking. I'm missing my bike today. But then I actually shoveled off my deck to clean off because the freezing thaw, you got to get rid of the ice. Yesterday, I was doing that literally with my shirt off in the sun. Like that's how warm it was. And then in the evening, of course, we had such a beautiful tour last night. Those of you who were able to join me. And then suddenly, of course, the temperature just drops. Now, that said, we do need some more snow. I know it looks very snowy here, but this is a very light snowpack for this time of year. Yeah, Mary Lou, the city's looking really brown, I think, isn't it? Um, but you always find more snow on this side of the continental divide. Now there's a church over on my right, but I want to come down a little further and turn around because the little old church here just frames itself so well with the mountains in the back. Is it, Pam? I mean, it's always so. Where Pam's going today, everyone? Are you doing a tour over there? You can squeeze one in. I loved your panorama tour. But over in Invermere, it's always warmer on that side as well. Where Pam's going? So if I went straight down to Golden, then I could hang a left, and it would take me about an hour 20 or so to get over to Invermere where Pam's going. So that's High Valley. But look at this. Whatever your faith is, look at that for just a setting. Oh, look at the old Catholic church with the tin roof bell tower up there with the mountain up behind it. Doesn't it? It looks like a painting, doesn't it? Thanks, Ruth. Claire, it is. It is just beautiful. I mean, it's just sort of the definition of beauty. Now, some of the other fun things that I really love about this little community here is you have, of course, all the old sheds, and they're all falling apart. The sheds are all falling apart, but the houses are staying well built. What's the difference? The difference is that the houses have basements and the sheds don't. Well, this land freezes and thaws continuously. So through that freeze and thaw, if you haven't got a basement, and we call it cribbing here, and that's why code in Alberta, you have to go down about 2 meters. That's to get through the permafrost. Can you hear these birds, everyone? Sorry, I'm just going to be quiet for a second. Was it last time we were here, Diane? You'll probably remember. I think, were they waxwings or crossbills that I found? There was a whole flock of them. I wonder if it's these down here again. I have to get, but they had, the other ones had a lot of red on them. So I have to get a bit closer. See, I think these are probably sparrows, but unless it's two different communities all having a really vigorous conversation. Oh, yeah, there you are. Oh, that one's got color on it. Yeah, I think these are crossbills. Yeah, Diane, there you are. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they are. I remember last time I go into that Merlin app after and look, but because it's a little bit warmer, grosbeak. That's what it is. Sorry, Pam, you're absolutely right. They're grosbeaks. You're absolutely. Thank you, Pam. And I remember Googling last time. Yep, they are grosbeaks. Which sounds a lot like an adolescent in Los Angeles saying, "Ooh, gross." Oh, look. Pam, you're exactly 100% correct as always. Look at this. There's a grosbeak right there with red. Hello, gorgeous birdie. Good morning to you. And last night we were watching probably a northern flicker, and then I saw a great big pileated woodpecker. And I did stop, but I was kind of on the road coming down. Not that it's busy, but I didn't quite have the nerve to get out of the car. So look at the ice. This is another reality that happens to roads. That's why. To see this freeze and thaw as it starts to melt. Yeah, hello, birdie. It just makes our world better. There's so many now. Down here, I forgot where I even parked. I have no idea where I parked. Yeah, the red ones are the males. Absolutely. Yeah. It was like the pileator I saw this morning was a female because it wasn't a very, very bright head on it. But there's the Alberta Tourism Visitor Center down there in the distance with the blue roof. And there is actually a stuffed wolverine in there, which was not killed. It was found at the bottom of a waterfall. It was one of the few times you can see one up close, but they're fabulous animals. It is the only one. I don't know about you, Pam. It is the only one of our famous animals that I've never actually seen with my own eyes alive. Now they're, up in northern Alberta, there's in BC, there's a big population of them, but there is a great documentary on YouTube somewhere where a fellow spent like 3 weeks in a shed trying to film them until they eventually became sort of accustomed to his presence there. Um, and of course here we've got of course historically a ton of migration from Eastern Europe and Ukraine around here, so I think it's quite significant that we see the Ukrainian flag still in the sport, particularly in this province. So there is, just look at the shadows now coming off the back of the mountain. Lucky you, Pam. I never have. Now I haven't seen the links yet this year at Lake Louise at the ski hill, but I'm gonna go have a look today because West Bowl is open and I haven't got in there this year. How's that for a bit of light? So believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, oh yeah, I'm down the street. We've already hit quorum. I don't know if you have a tour to go to right after this. If you're booked on another one, please don't hang around for my benefit. But I'm going to head up towards Lake Louise. And this was my whole scheme because say with a high of +4, thanks Chloe, I thought it would be just more fun to go skiing in the afternoon. There's Mount Dennis for a few hours. And I've got a couple ideas. Well, we'll do our happiness tour later today. And then Finn we've got a lot of tours on today. You know, Finn and I aren't very good at looking. You're welcome. And look down there. That's the way, thanks, Diane, that you would drive west. Now, if you were to drive down the road a little ways here, you would turn right and head down to the Natural Bridge and then Emerald Lake, which are both just gorgeous. Here, by the way, I keep meaning to show you this. The spiral tunnel's up the other way. That's how the system is if I curve around back here. Thanks, Claire. And that's the way back up into Alberta. So you'll see that I just put that into the chat, which is fascinating. And then that's not my very best photo, but that's one of the times I cycled up to Takaka Falls there, second largest waterfall in Canada. And by the way, if you still haven't been on it, virtually visiting, you can download for free a video that I did on the Takaka Falls. And we made it for free for a few reasons, but one, it was such a wet day that there was actually water on the lenses. I did film a new 360 virtual visiting yesterday, so I'm really, really hoping that the sound's good because I tried it biking, so that was fun. Thanks, Diane. I see what else I've got in here. That's all I've got in at the moment. Now, I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, we are kind of on quorum, but as always, I know sometimes people love to come for a little drive. If you want to come down, Elizabeth, I have been to the Burgess Shale. Yes, I haven't done a virtual tour there because I can't. I'd be hiking up, and I don't think I'd have reception. I'd have to get permission. Now, the just so you know, if you want to come for a little drive, I'm not promising the condition of the windshield because it's in bad shape. But if I can take you down as far as the highway, just so you get a sense, and then I won't drive on the highway, of course. But the Burgess Shale, Elizabeth, have you been here? Have you ever gone? Because that again is the birth of this all becoming UNESCO. You see all the cracks in the windshield. Yeah, but we're so desperately trying no one wants to replace their windshield. Thank you, Lynn. In the winter, no one wants to because, let me wash it for you, because then you just get another crack. I mean, it's almost a given. So, but Lynn, I'm setting aside a couple of houses for you here. Pam, Pam, do you want to come this summer? Because Finn hasn't been. So I thought I'd book him on one of the tours. It's quite a long day, but it's good. It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it. And we could do, thanks, Lynn. Well, Lynn, I mean, this is your special place here. And there were a lot of trains staging. So that's why I kind of raced into town. But yeah, Pam, let's plan that. So there's Parks Canada's vehicles, always with a green stripe. Oops, I'm not allowed to go right on that one. No, just loop around. You know, it's always embarrassing when you get lost in the town of 191 people. See, these are all the B&Bs. Hola, Sarita. So, Chloe, if you wanted a B&B guest house here, that one's got the fish on the side. So last time I was here, I took you down to the old inn. So that's the only other real employer in town here. That's pretty neat. But one of the little shops up on the corner, Lynn. Dee, great question. Thank you for asking. So I don't know where you are in the world. In the east part of North America, they put salt on the roads. We don't. We put gravel on the roads for a lot of reasons. And you'll see it all down here. Now, salt is bad for the environment. This is called Truffle Pigs, by the way. Excellent restaurant. But salt is bad for the environment. Also, we get so cold it doesn't work, so we put gravel everywhere. And that means principally a bigger vehicle than your own goes past you and it spits up the gravel. So you get these sort of things. And if you don't get those fixed right away, then the cracks form. So you're in Ontario, right? So what we say out west here, and I was just in Ontario. You maybe joined me last week. I was just in Ottawa, but you'd never buy a car from the east because they're rusted underneath. Whereas from the west, you get the cracked windshields. It's an Alberta thing, absolutely. Those trees up there are Russian willows. They were all planted to create shade for monarchs when they arrive by trains. Yeah, so I mean, that kind of fact. I'll tell you one quick side story. One time I was in downtown Toronto in the winter, and I was at a conference thing, so I had some nice dress shoes on. And the way I'm dressed today is much more my regular way of being. But I had dress shoes on, and I had some blue on them, which was obviously the melted ice or the melted salt, that was put down for the roads. Well, I did a stupid thing. I licked my finger and wiped it off, and I licked my finger again. I poisoned myself. Do you know, for about 2 days, it is bad for the child. Yeah, for about 2 days, I actually felt sick. This is the old school there, which has been fixed up, but the kids tend to go into high school in Golden, although there's one child who comes all the way from here to Finn's school in Canmore, because the Francophone school. By the way, there is the house of the superintendent of the park. And how do you not love that home? I love that home and that architecture. Just such a treat. But yeah, so the salt, I mean, the animals come out, and of course they lick salt, and they lick natural salt. Is that your home, Lynn? Lynn, it's all yours if you want to come back and administer a 1,400 square kilometer national park. I'll put in a good word for you. And boy, oh boy, have I got some pull. I'll say hire Lynn and give her a visa. And they'll say, yes, sir. Tends to be how they react to me. We're about to go over the Kicking Horse. The Kicking Horse is actually the merging of the Yoho River, which is where Taka Falls is, and the Kicking Horse that comes down the valley. And then that all flows down into the Columbia River, of course, which is the biggest discharge into the Pacific Ocean on the west coast. But the biggest river that's solely in British Columbia, of course, is the mighty Fraser. Now, if the movement is not bothering you, see, there's so much. I didn't do the Burgess Shale things today. I gave you the history. I didn't show you the plot. Like, there's about 10 different ways I can do tours here. So I love these little places. I'm just going to go up the road just a little ways and pull over, which I have done before, with a clay cat. Wonder? I don't know, Cheryl. I really don't know. I've always been a cat lover, but cats are not great in this environment because, of course, we have so many migratory birds. So we are heading now towards Kicking Horse Pass. And oh, how I wish I would get, I get one bar up in the spiral tunnels, and right at the border it cuts out. So, yeah, Lynn, I totally understand. I actually know a few other people who struggle with the movement. I wonder how you did on the bike. Some of you may not know, but I have a new bicycle. but yes, it's I'm not very often someone. I'm not a consumer, and I'm not really into toys. But my bike is an ethical thing as well, because I'm trying not to ever drive in Banff. So my car isn't part of, because we have far too many cars for a small community. And frankly, by the time I lock the bike up, it's the same amount of time as going and doing the parking, because we have paid parking. Now, I don't have to pay because I'm a local, but still. So I'm just going to pull up to this chain off area up here just to try and show you a little bit of waterfall, and then we'll call it a day. It absolutely, Diane, is my second car. Now, you're going to all be very, very sad, but I have listed my van, and someone's actually looking at it today. But it's only to put it away to buy an all-wheel drive van in the future. It's just I'm traveling so much. Is that? Yeah, fair enough. I didn't actually see. I think it either. Good question, Diane. I didn't see the truck flashing its lights at me, but it could be an animal on the road, or it could be police as well. But also, sometimes it'll look like vehicles are flashing their lights um, because of the bumps, the frost heaves on the road. So thank you for telling me that. But this is why I don't drive on the highway too much. I see this is the side of Mount Stephen. The reason why. Sorry, was it that? Sorry. If it was flashing lights that way, an oversized vehicle. Yep. Actually, Pam, you should sometime do a seated talk about driving. Pam drives massive distances in the winter. See those? Those are waterfalls, and they're creeping out between the different thrust faults because there is water running inside these mountains all the time, and and because it's so porous, the type of limestone. Then when it opens up and it comes out and hits this cold weather, then it freezes. So that's pretty interesting. And then there's the path. So you'll see that's where I'm going to continue up, and I'm going to charge my phone a bit, head up to Lake Louise, and then as the day, it's still cold out here. It would be drinkable. Yep, yep. Anywhere if water's moving quickly, I'm happy to drink it. They tell you not to, but I'm happy to drink it if it's flowing quickly out in the Rockies. Here, you have pretty bad luck if you actually got a bit of Giardia. Oh, there's one more waterfall, sorry, just over here, just to show you this one as well. Exactly that kind of formation. See, where there's no trees, and that is, of course, a huge seepage right along the fault line there. You might see just that beautiful blue color there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, listen, it's time for me to charge the phone back up. Hi, Paul. I see you're Canadian. Lovely to have you here, but it is time for me to say goodbye. But I'll see you all a little bit later up at the lake, and then I'm going to be skiing. Oh, it's so nice. Well, big hugs to all you. Thank you for your support, those who can, and thank you to all the sponsors and everyone. Thanks, Sue. So peace and love from the Trans-Canada Highway out here in Yoho National Park, but I'm heading back to Alberta up there. Okay, take care. Lots of love. Elizabeth, I'm going to take you skiing on Thursday, but I'm doing a tour this afternoon on World Happiness Day, and I haven't decided if I'm going to do it up the side of the mountain or down the valley. I'm going to see how warm it is and wind and all that kind of thing. So I haven't decided where I'm going to do that one. But hey, big hugs and happy spring. See you all as soon as possible. Bye-bye.